Greenland. More than 80% of Greenland's surface is covered in ice. It's the largest body of ice on Earth, outside Antarctica. Today, despite its remoteness, scientists come here from all around the world to study the effects of climate change on the ice. But 50 years ago, at the height of the Cold War, virtually no one did scientific research on Greenland. Except the American military. The ice sheet under my feet is up to 2 miles deep. And 50 years ago, the Americans decided that the perfect place to build a military base was down there, inside the ice. Officially, they called it Camp Century because it was 100 miles from the coast, but the men who built it gave it a different name. The City Under the Ice. More than 200 people lived here. It was a massive project. Huge convoys used to grind their way from the coast up onto the ice, laden with supplies for Camp Century. They used to call them heavy swings. When it was finished, Camp Century had a library, a hospital, and even a gym. And what powered it all? What else but a nuclear power station? I know it's hard to believe, but they buried a nuclear reactor inside the ice.
Now here it is, with all 5 control rods withdrawn 6.24 inches. PM 2A when critical at 0652 hours.
Camp Century was built to do research into fighting in cold weather environments, but that's not what made it famous. Today there's nothing left of this city under the ice. They took out the nuclear reactor and abandoned the camp somewhere up there. But what happened at Camp Century would eventually, almost by accident, lead to a scientific revolution. It was a revolution that would challenge a scientific article of faith. The idea that climate could only change exceptionally slowly. Because Camp Century saw the beginning of an entirely new branch of science, using samples of ancient ice to reconstruct the climate of the past. The Greenland ice sheet is made up by year after year of snowfall. As snow falls, it captures a record of the conditions in the atmosphere, which then gets preserved in the layers of ice. So many traces from the past are buried in the ice. There's ash from big volcanic eruptions like Krakatoa. Dust from Ice Age dust storms as far away as Mongolia. And even traces of lead from smelting during the Roman Empire. It's all blown in by the wind, carried down by the snow, and buried down there. Even more importantly, as snow falls, it captures an indirect record of the temperature at the time it was falling. And the ice preserves this temperature information. So scientists drill down to retrieve long cylinders of ancient ice known as ice cores. Now they could use these ice cores to create a record of past temperatures. In effect, they could travel back in time. And in the mid-1980s, they began to realise that the old idea that climate always changed slowly couldn't be more wrong. Today, this freezer in Denver in the United States stores many of the ice cores that have been drilled around the world.
I don't think I've ever been as cold in my life. The cores that are stored in these silver tubes are at minus 35 degrees C. They're so valuable that there's backup systems in place to make sure the freezer keeps working if there's a power cut. And even so, the guys that work here carry bleepers 24 hours a day to tell them if there's been a power failure. And I know you don't want to know this, but the fluid in my nostrils is just frozen up.
It's been said that these ice cores are like having a weather station in Greenland for the last 100,000 years. And by chemically analysing the ice, it's possible to reconstruct the climate, counting back through tens of thousands of years. In the early 1980s, most scientists believed, as this graph shows, that the climate changed only very slowly and gradually through the Ice Age and up to the present warm period. But the ice cores told a completely different story. The climate seemed to be jumping all over the place, from warm to cold and back again.
What the ice revealed was hard to believe. In the past 100,000 years, there had been literally dozens of these incredibly large changes. What's more, the changes didn't happen gradually. In most cases, they occurred in just a few short years.
Scientists realised that they'd fundamentally misunderstood how the climate works. Far from changing with imperceptible slowness, it was now beginning to dawn on them that the climate could change big, it could change often, and it could change fast.
You know, the discovery of abrupt climate change unleashed a previously hidden literary talent among climate scientists, a talent for metaphor. Climate was an angry beast, and we, it was said, were poking it with a stick. Alternatively, climate was a flickering switch, turning on and off between hot and cold periods. But regardless of the metaphor you plump for, it was clear that global warming could mean some nasty surprises.
We might wake up one day to find that global warming had triggered a sudden massive shift in climate, like the ones revealed in the ice cores. But in the 1980s, this idea was still controversial. Many scientists, not just sceptics, argued that the theory of rapid climate change was still unproven. And the sceptics had another argument. They said that something as vast and complicated as a global climate system was simply too big for we humans to influence. A new discovery was about to change all that. Ugly fact number 2 came not from a scientific breakthrough, but from a social revolution. After all, this was the 1980s. I was at university, studying hard of course, and one thing I remember is it was the era of big hair. A new age of consumerism. The trouble was, packed within the consumer lifestyle was an environmental time bomb. Aerosols. Aerosols owed their existence to one of the unluckiest men in scientific history. Thomas Midgley invented CFCs. The gases that were used in aerosols and in fridges.